Howdy again everyone, and the Pergear company have just released another new lens onto the market, a little APS-C manual focus 25mm f1.7. It comes in at an astonishingly low price of only $69 US. That's impressive considering the lens's bright maximum aperture, and its 25mm focal length is the full frame equivalent of 37.5mm, a close match to the perspective of the human eye, giving a moderately wide angle but still a slight emphasis to pull you into your subject. For anyone interested, here's what its coverage is like on a full frame camera. As you can see, this is definitely an APS-C only optic. But anyway, on an APS-C camera, this is a really useful focal length and aperture, so if you can deal with focusing manually, it could be fantastically practical. Is it good value though, or is it just plain cheap? Well, let's dig in and find out. I'd like to thank Pergear for sending me one of these lenses for testing, although as usual, this is a totally independent review. It's available on Fujifilm X, Micro Four Thirds, Nikon Z, Canon RF, and Sony E mirrorless camera mounts, and it's the Sony version I'll be testing today. As you can see, the lens is real small, and at 165 grams it is lightweight. However, being made of metal, its body actually still feels quite solid. It's based on a metal lens mount without any weather sealing. At the rear we get an aperture control ring with nice positive clicks to it at every f-stop. For some reason, you don't get a click at f2 though, going straight from f1.7 to f2.8. In front of that, we get a metal focus ring which turns smoothly, but not very far. It's tiny, as you might imagine, so you sometimes have to feel around to get your hands on it. On the first copy of the lens that I tested, that focus ring worked for a good 100 pictures or so, but then broke. In fairness, Pergear sent me a replacement lens pretty quickly, and the replacement is working just fine, so hopefully that was just an issue with an early production lens. Anyway, all of that aside, here is the lens's focus breathing for you, which is moderately strong, as you can see. The lens has a tiny 37mm filter thread size. It is advertised as coming with a hood, but mine didn't have one, although it did have a padded carry pouch to put it in. Overall, the build quality is okay here. While the lens is lovely and small, that does make it slightly fiddly to work with though. Alright then, image quality. I'll be testing it today on my Sony a7C camera in its 26 megapixel APS-C crop mode. No in-camera corrections are available with this lens. In the middle of the image, sharpness is quite good straight from f1.7, but contrast is only okay. Stopping down to f2, f2.8 and finally f4 brings a series of tiny improvements that leave you with excellent image quality in the middle. I guess it just takes a little stopping down to get there. Anyway, let's open back up to f1.7 and look over into the corners. It looks like we're getting a bumpy field of resolution here. The mid-frame of the image looks a little soft. The top right of the resolution circle here looks sharp, but then right on the very edges it looks soft again. What a ride! Image quality is the same at f2. At f2.8 there's a little extra brightness and contrast in those corners, but not really any more sharpness. The mid-frame still looks a little soft though. f4 looks a little sharper in the mid-frame though, but the corners are still weak. At f5.6 we finally get a small improvement there though. At f8 and f11, further slight improvements lead to okay corner image quality. Interestingly, despite the effects of diffraction, f16 is actually your best bet for corner image quality, except that now, back in the middle, contrast has suddenly washed itself out pretty badly. So yeah, those results speak for themselves frankly. This lens's sharpness and contrast is all over the place, popping in and out like my car's FM radio reception when driving through the Welsh mountains. Anyway, let's look at distortion and vignetting. The lens suffers from only slight barrel distortion here, but vignetting is strong at f1.7. It's the same at f2, at f2.8, f4, and f5.6 there are some gradual improvements, but vignetting will always darken the corners with this lens. Next, close-up image quality, and when the lens's focus ring is actually working, it can get you down to only 20 centimeters to your subject. Close-up image quality at f1.7 sees a drop in contrast and extra softness. At f2 we get just a touch more contrast. At f2.8 there's another improvement, but it's at f4 that we finally get sharp close-up image quality. Next, work against bright light, and unfortunately this is the lens's biggest problem. Even the first hint of a bright light anywhere near the image results in absolutely massive glaring, which badly washes out your picture. Don't think this will only be a problem when shooting at night time. I would say about a quarter to a third of all my pictures taken in daylight or even indoors exhibited washed out contrast because some kind of bright light was nearby somewhere. Just check out these examples. It was really frustrating. While we're working in the dark, let's take a look for coma and sun stars. At f1.7, some coma smearing is visible in the image corners, but I've seen worse. It's about the same at f2 and even at f2.8, but at f4 it's starting to go away. Let's zoom out for a minute. I want to show you something. Just look at the glaring coming from the right hand side of the image there. That's from a nearby bright source of light, ruining the picture. Thankfully though, the problem doesn't seem quite so bad when that light is directly in the image frame. So I can show you some sun stars here, which begin to emerge at f5.6. At f8, f11 and f16, they start getting nice and strong. Next, Bokeh. This lens's out of focus backgrounds look averagely smooth, but bright specular highlights tend to have a little bit of green outline to them, which leads us on, finally, to longitudinal chromatic aberration. At f1.7 it's there, and it's quite noticeable. At f2.8 it's starting to go away, and at f4 it's finally gone. Overall, in a lot of ways, I wanted to be able to recommend this lens. It's so inexpensive and it has a useful focal length and aperture, but it's not really very sharp, and worst of all, the lens's flaring problem is really serious and really seriously annoying, washing out a lot of your pictures seemingly out of nowhere. Frustrating. So I can't quite recommend this one.